Today I'm going to talk about a very important topic, and that is your own immune system. You may not realize this, but your immune system is the most kick-ass military that ever was. To help you understand the immune system, we're going to compare it to the US military. And to do that, I'm actually going to bring on a guest, and his name is Commander Dave Overcash. He's been in the US Navy for 27 years. He's retired now. His 27 years of service included over 300 landings on aircraft carriers, 5 deployments to the Middle East, overseas tours in Hawaii, Japan, and South Korea, and service at the Pentagon. Dave, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Dr. Berg. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to our discussion.
So what I want to do is I want to try to make this as simple as possible. It's difficult because it's a complex subject, but let me just attempt to do that. What is the immune system? The immune system is your defense system. It's your military. It's there to protect you. You have various barriers. You have your skin, the outside, and you also have the barrier of your internal skin. In fact, the internal skin of your body is quite large. In fact, it covers 400 square meters. That's the size of 2 tennis courts. So it's a tremendous amount of surface area, and you have billions of immune cells just beneath the surface, guarding that wall, waiting for an invader or a pathogen, viruses, bacteria. So that would be your front line of defense. So Dave, give me a comparison of that to what the military has.
The formal military term for that would be the forward line of troops, or the forward edge of the battle space. There's going to be highly trained, but not necessarily, very specialized troops, but very large numbers of them in mechanized units. That might be a term some of your folks would be familiar with, but those are your general troops that are going to be right up along the front, that are going to be able to detect any movements in your adversaries and be able to be the first line of defense against whatever comes against them.
So this would also compare to something you would see at the airport. You have metal detectors, you have all sorts of screening devices to weed out those bad actors or people that potentially could carry a bomb on the plane.
When I was in practice, I would do seminars in governmental agencies. So I bought online those little credit card knives, right, as a box cutter. I thought they were really cool. They actually fold into a credit card. So you know where this is going. I basically bought one, put it in my wallet, and I forgot about it. And I actually somehow took a flight, and that wasn't even detected. But then the next week, it was in my wallet. I went to do one of my seminars at the governmental agency in DC. And so as I went through security, I just remembered as it was going in that I had that in my wallet, and my heart started to pound. And all of a sudden, the little red light went off. They opened up the wallet and found this credit card knife, and they called, I don't know what code red or something. They called the code to shut down the entire building, and they pointed to me, and they put me on the wall, put me in handcuffs, and I said, no, you can have it. You can. Right. So they took me to a room to wait for the FBI to come. They wanted to check me out just to make sure. So I'm like, I'm just here to do a seminar. What's happening? And unfortunately, there was a huge line of people, and they were like, they couldn't leave. They couldn't get in. Everything was frozen. So I had to wait for some hours. And so I'm sitting there in handcuffs, and there's 2 military people guarded, just sitting there, just guarding me. And it was apparently a room that they had some food in it, and there was a cake, and they're talking about nutrition, and I just couldn't help myself to speak up and talk about nutrition. And it just wasn't the best time to talk about, carbohydrates. So I kind of quickly, so then the FBI came, and they said, "What's your intent?" I said, "I just thought it was cool." And I got it. And so they go, "Yeah, this is kind of cool." And so they escorted me to the car, and everyone was watching, and I had to secure this weapon in the car.
So I can go back and do my seminar presentation. So this is another example how the immune system would work. It's constantly scanning for pathogens, things that are not itself. And a very important part of the immune system is to differentiate between the good guys and the bad guys. So the main players on the front line of defense are the phagocytes. Okay, these are cells that eat bacteria and viruses. And the top professional phagocyte is called a macrophage. And macrophage means big cell that eats. It pretty much acts as a garbage disposal. It eats up debris. But if there's an invader, that macrophage will go in there and take it down. And if there's a lot of invaders, it will hold the fort while it recruits backup. So this part of the immune system is called the innate, which is part of the immune system that doesn't need to train any specialist. You're pretty much born with this. These are general soldiers that have a non-specific defense mechanism. So they can handle little stuff, but when things get too crazy, your body recruits more specialists from this system right here. This is called the adaptive immune system or the acquired. So then we have the neutrophil. Now, when you get an infection and you have mucus and pus, 70% of that is made out of neutrophils. Okay, so neutrophils have three weapons. They can eat microbes, but they also can throw chemicals as well as a net over the microbes. And so the chemicals that they use are hydrogen peroxide, the active ingredient in bleach. So they use bleach to kill these microbes after they pull them in. What's interesting in the military is there are certain types of chemical warfare that they use. So Dave, why don't you give us a comparison on that?
Yeah, there sure is. There's chemical and biological weapons that they're very effective in neutralizing an adversary. Everything related to a chemical kind of attack slows you down and has an inordinate impact on you compared to normal conventional weapons.
I remember when I went to basic training, that was in 1983. I was in the military, the Army Reserve for 5 years. I was a medic. We had to go through this gas chamber. And of course, they did not give us really toxic chemicals, but they exposed us to tear gas. And that was a major thing for a lot of people, including myself. I can't even imagine being exposed to something even stronger than that, because that was pretty strong. So the neutrophil will also throw a net, like Spider-Man, on the pathogen with chemicals to dissolve it.
You know, your example there of kind of like wrapping up and then adding chemicals. What it reminds me of is indirect fires that are used in the military, where let's say some troops are on the ground and they need to call in artillery support or close air support. What they might do is a term that's used is bracketing. You know, they'll call in a fire and they'll see where that bomb lands, they'll see where that shell lands, and then they'll adjust that fire. And then when they get it onto exactly where they want it, they're going to ask for maximum effect of the available indirect fires. And then, they'll be able to take out the adversary that way.
So we have the macrophage, the neutrophil. These are both phagocytes. Then we have something over here called the natural killer cell. So one of the things that this cell does is it releases something called interferon. Interferon comes from the word interfere, because the function of interferon interferes with viral reproduction. So it stops the production of viruses, which is the virus weapon. So it slows down the production of the enemy.
The leadership of the American military realized we have to destroy their means of replicating their capabilities. And so the United States 8th Air Force in World War II, based in England, went after the entire German military-industrial complex. They bombed every factory you could possibly imagine, destroying plants that produced tanks, plants that produced artillery pieces, plants that produced ball bearings, anything that would produce a mechanized piece of equipment. So the idea was, wow, we can't get rid of these folks fast enough, or this equipment fast enough. So if we can prevent them from producing any more, at least there's a finite number of things that we have to destroy instead of an infinite.
All right, we just talked about the innate immune system. Now let's talk about the adaptive immune system. Now, the adaptive immune system is acquired. In other words, it learns from experience. In order for that part of the immune system to work correctly, you need to expose it to a pathogen or a germ. So if someone lives in a sterilized environment, they never develop their immune system. So it's very, very important to understand that your immune system grows and becomes stronger through training, going through an infection, overcoming it, and now having that memory of it. So it's ready for the next time. Dave, give me an example how important training is in the military.
Our operations manuals, people say, are written in blood, right? So all the mistakes that previous folks used and either died or crashed aircraft, the lessons learned from those things are then written in your operations manual, so you don't make that same mistake twice. There's a lot of potential for problems there, and they came to pass in the Vietnam War. There were 3 major aircraft carrier fires. Hundreds of men were killed in fires that started on those aircraft carriers. They had a very difficult time stopping the fires once they began because of all those things that are on the flight deck. Not everyone on the aircraft carrier was trained at the time to fight fires. And so they instituted a program where every single person that goes onto a ship, any ship, has to go through significant firefighting experience, because they found that the initial wave of firefighters were killed in trying to fight these fires, and then there wasn't anybody trained to really take out those fires once they began. So yeah, if you don't train, you are damned to continue having similar accidents over time.
So this part of the immune system are more specialist. They're like the special forces. They actually have very specific actions that they are assigned to. These guys are more general. These guys are more targeted.
Bring me Thanos!
Dave, give us some examples of the different units or special forces that you have in the military.
A lot of times we can't match the pure numbers that maybe the adversary that we go against has, but we need to have better training. And so we have a lot of special forces or special operations forces in the military, the Navy SEALs, Delta Force. What we've found is that, I can think of a couple of examples. We've found that even if our adversary, say, purchases a very excellent piece of equipment, we could beat that adversary with a lesser capability if we have trained harder than that adversary. And that's why maybe we might not be so afraid of a North Korean pilot with a great piece of equipment, because he doesn't train very much, because their economy is so poor, they don't have the resources to be able to train a lot. And so he may be up there in a great piece of equipment, but he really doesn't know how to operate it. He's not proficient at it. Or even say the Iranian Navy purchases a Russian submarine. That's not the same as a Russian submarine crew, highly trained, operating a Russian piece of equipment. The Iranians aren't going to be as good at it. So we found that training, that exposure, the more realistic the training, the better. One more example I'd give you is that in the Marines, when they have target practice, they don't use automated targets. They actually have the Marines will go behind a dirt berm, and I believe they still do this, and pull the targets up and down so that they can hear the bullets going overhead while the other Marines are conducting target practice. That acclimates them more to an environment where they might be in battle, which makes them more likely to be able to succeed when they are in that kind of environment.
So these specialized immune cells, they're called T cells, stands for thymus, basically get their training in the thymus gland, which is not the thyroid. Sounds similar, and it's actually located lower than the thyroid. So the thyroid's here, thymus is right above the heart. And what's interesting is only 30% of those T cells make it through this training. The rest die off. So they're very selective. And when you're born, you have this huge thymus. As you get older, it starts shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And stress will shrink it. A vitamin D deficiency will cause a shrinkage of the thymus gland. So nutrition is very, very important in keeping your thymus very strong. In reality, these pathogens target different weaknesses within your immune system. So if you have a very strong immune system, even though it might not be very large, it could handle a huge invasion of viruses or pathogens.
We have a lot of special forces or special operations forces in the military. Some examples would be the Navy SEALs, maybe Green Berets, Delta Force, the U.S. Army Rangers. The Air Force has a group called the Pararescue Men, or PJs. Those are probably the most well-known. They're the most highly trained, the most specialized forces that we have for very specific target sets.
One point I want to make is this. When someone gets an infection, they have a cough, a runny nose, a fever, some type of indicator that there's a battle going on within your body. The worst thing to do is to stop that infection, to suppress those symptoms. Because what's going to happen is you're stopping the training of your T cells. You're cutting it short. And when you try to suppress the immune system, the duration of infection goes longer and longer. So they have to work harder and harder. So it's very, very important to enhance the immune system with diet, nutrition, keeping your stress low, than it is to quickly try to shut down those symptoms. All right, so we talked about the 3 players under the innate. There's actually 4 main players within the adaptive immune system. First one is the killer T cells. Now, what these guys do is they have a chemical called perforin, which punches a hole through the cell, and then they release a chemical that causes the cell to commit suicide for the greater good of the body. So these cells that die for the greater good to kill off that virus are considered like hero cells.
And I am Iron Man.
Many examples in, say, the Battle of Iwo Jima, where there were a lot of Marines that would jump on grenades that landed near them and their buddies, and they wanted to protect their friends. And a lot of examples also with folks that are in the Medal of Honor, which is the highest Medal of Valor that's awarded in the military, where they're wounded, they believe that they're not going to make it, and so they would do something that was extraordinary or out of the ordinary, where they would go off by themselves to create some kind of a diversion that would allow the troops they left behind to exploit, the weakness that was made by that movement. But they knew that they were going to die.
All right, the next player is the T helper cell. So this cell is a very important cell. It is the main coordinator for the entire battle going on. So it's going to recruit, backup. It's going to determine what players are involved, what part of your military is going to be used, at what volume, what types of weaponry. Dave, give me an example of what you would have in the military that compares to that.
Oh, absolutely. That's a commander at any level. Give some general direction about how he wants it done and how often those things are going to happen. You have to have somebody at the top that's directing the overall movement and kind of sees the big picture.
Now, one thing I want to mention about the T helper cell is that viruses have strategies to invade and take over the body. And our body has strategies to kind of go back and forth. So we have this battle back and forth. And if we take the HIV virus, its strategy is to take down the T helper cell. If it succeeds in doing that because your immune system is weak, the entire immune system won't be able to work. And that's why it's called an immunodeficiency disease. So viruses are very intelligent. They're going to take down like the key player involved in this battle. Now, Dave, give me an example of something in the military that is somewhat similar.
An individual at the top is as the center of gravity. In Desert Storm, it was Saddam Hussein, or Iraqi Freedom Saddam Hussein. And even when we attacked Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden. So we're constantly going after the head and believing that if we take out the head of the organization, then the rest of the body or the rest of the country will fall into disarray, and it will be a better use of our resources and make it easier for us to go in. And the key to all of it is being undetected, because once an adversary knows what you're trying to do, they can build up their defenses and they can counter whatever it is that you're trying to do. I have a couple examples of some really damaging spies that we've had over our time. One, her name was Ana Montez. She was a spy for Cuba in the Defense Intelligence Agency. We found that she did some amazing damage by her time, right in the middle of all the greatest intelligence that we had about Cuba during the Cold War. And then another one being Aldrich James, who was a KGB spy in the CIA for the longest time. We had no idea. And he did some the damage from his passing of information that he was able to get undetected was really significant.
Now, one strategy that these viruses have is they have the ability to go inside the cell and turn off your vitamin D receptor. This means that you can't absorb any more vitamin D. Apparently, they know that vitamin D is crucial for your immune system. It is involved at every single level. And if you don't have enough vitamin D, then you can't turn off these huge, what's called cytokine storms, which is an inflammatory condition that's out of control. It's an overactive immune system. And that's really what's killing people in this COVID-19 situation that we're having right now. And this is why it's so important to understand our own immune system and the enemy, the virus, and what their strategies are, so you can actually overcome it. So since we're talking a little bit about strategy, there has been a person in history, Sun Tzu, that was a military strategist, and he wrote a book called The Art of War. And I happened to find a book that was translated from original Mandarin Chinese. This guy who was in the Vietnam War got very interested in this book. He spent 6 years learning Mandarin Chinese and then translated word for word the entire text. The original translation of the title of Sun Tzu's book, based on the author's research, was not the art of war. It was the technology of war, which is very different. Technology means more of an exact science of how to do something, versus art implies adding your own creativity. I want to give you just one quote. It says this: following this reasoning, supreme skill is not 100 victories in 100 battles. Supreme skill is subduing the enemy's operations and its forces without battle. So if we take a look at that quote and compare it to the battle that's going on between your immune system and a virus, how would we subdue the virus's operation? Well, with the COVID-19, we know that that virus pretty much only attacks someone with a weakened immune system. So the obvious strategy wouldn't necessarily only be to avoid the virus forever. It would be also to strengthen the immune system, because that virus really can't do anything up against a really strong immune system. All right, so let's talk about the next player, the B cells. B cells make antibodies. So antibodies are created from an infection. So in other words, this is where your immune system learns from being exposed to a very specific pathogen. So as soon as it gets exposed and you go through the infection, okay, and you recover, the next time that specific microbe invades your body, your immune system is ready. It will neutralize that infection, so you have immunity. You're not going to have this massive reaction anymore. And one way that the antibodies do this is they lock on to a pathogen. It's like handcuffs. And they keep it from going into the cell, so it dries out and it dies. Another way that it does it is it tags the pathogen. They assist in the killing by identifying who are the bad guys, so then the killer T cells come in there and do the dirty work. So Dave, give me an example of something in the military that's equivalent to that.
A couple examples. Working as a team with other capabilities is really critical to your effectiveness. So one would be a sniper and the scout or the spotter that's with him or her. So you have one individual who's finding targets and passing the information on where the targets are to the person who has the skill to actually shoot the weapon. So that is a very effective team, the scout and the sniper working together. Another one would be, I think, in naval aviation in the Cold War. One aircraft might fly out that has a great sensor suite, so they can soak up electronic signals while they're trying to find an adversary ship or something like that. But that aircraft isn't going to have the weapons that would be needed to take out the actual ship. So one aircraft has the sensors, the other one has the weapons, and once the first one finds the adversary, then the other one is tasked with eliminating that adversary.
All right, so the last player in the adaptive immune system is called the T regulatory cell. Now, this cell is also called the T suppressor cell, and one of the functions of this cell is to differentiate between the bad guys and the good guys. So this is very, very, very important because it's there to prevent autoimmune diseases. And if this cell doesn't work correctly, your body will start to develop antibodies against its own tissue. And that could be any tissue. So you can have MS, lupus, Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis, where you have these antibodies that are attacking itself. Autoimmune conditions is very similar to friendly fire in the military. Dave, can you give us a little example of what could happen in the military if you have a rogue player or a traitor?
We are very concerned about those interlopers or those rogue agents. Well, the military has a lot of things in place to try to find spies. That kind of rogue element can do extreme damage to an entire country. Its greatest secrets. Same thing, even on that carrier strike group example, one adversary aircraft that's kind of hiding in a strike force returning to the carrier could wipe out a carrier when its defenses are down. So it's critical to find to be able to identify who's friendly and who's not.
Now, another very important thing about the T regulatory cells is it has a suppressive action. It calms down the immune system. It puts out the fire when you have this hyper-inflammatory response. It's called the cytokine storm. So really what kills people in certain infections is not necessarily the viral entity. It's these killer cells over here and this cell, because the regulatory cell is deficient. We don't have this water hose to put out the fire. So that pretty much completes all the different players in the immune system. Dave, do you have anything else you want to add to this?
There's a saying that General George Patton in World War II had, and he said that planning is everything and plans are nothing. In other words, you can come up with a plan to fight a battle, but everything's going to change after the first shot is fired. But the importance of learning about your adversary, understanding yourself, is absolutely everything. You can identify how to prepare. You can identify your own weaknesses. You can identify your adversary's weaknesses and your own strengths and their strengths, so you know where to attack. You know where to fortify your own weaknesses. That's everything. That will help you be prepared to fight an adversary. And our military is doing that all the time against all our adversaries. And I would think that you would probably say that's exactly what your audience needs to be doing and what we need to be doing.
Dave, I just want to say thank you so much for your service and also for helping me in this presentation. And I also want to mention to you watching, you have in your body right now the most amazing, kick-ass military immune system that ever existed. And all you have to do is feed it the right foods, take care of it, take the vitamin D, the vitamin C, the zinc, and it will return the favor by protecting you.
Hey, we're back.
With another amazing recipe.
No grains, no sugar, totally keto. There's no suffering in keto.
Absolutely not, Karen.
And it's an immune system builder.
Absolutely. You have to check this out.
I think you should hurry up, watch the recipe, and make it yourself. It's just so easy to be keto.
But is it simple?
It's super simple. We hope you enjoy making it as much as we are enjoying eating it.